Good. And so, thank you everyone for joining us. We'll give everyone 2 seconds to join. We've got some people tuning in. It's that time of year again. Gartner Magic Quadrant has been released for conversational AI platforms, and we're gonna have a look at it. We are gonna have a look at it, but there's a few things that we can and can't do. So maybe we should start there. Basically, we're not allowed to necessarily show you anything that is kind of word for word in the report. We're not really allowed to criticize what's in it, unfortunately. Whether there's things worth criticizing, we might see.
We'll definitely give our opinion.
Yes, we can give our opinion. Exactly, that's exactly what it is. We'll give our opinion on what it is. So, for those that don't know, Gartner's kind of Magic Quadrant for conversational AI platforms. It's been running since about 2023, I think, or 2024. I think 2023, then it missed out 24, then it came back in 25, and it's back again in 26. And so the idea here is it's conversational AI platforms that are intended to automate conversations between customers and businesses, mostly focused around customer experience and contact centers. And essentially what Gartner does is it does a big kind of piece of work every year, and it looks at various different scoring criteria, and it ranks them on this kind of quadrant, which you will know fine well because it does it for all kinds of different technology types. And obviously, this is very near and dear to our hearts. This is kind of what we spend all day doing and have done for the last sort of 10 years or so. And so it's very interesting when this kind of moment happens in terms of figuring out who is essentially from the absence of anything else. It's kind of like who is deemed the cream of the crop, so to speak, in terms of enterprise conversational AI. All right, so again, we'll see how we go. We'll kind of get into it, and we'll give you our opinion, Benoit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think what's always very, very interesting when you read those reports, and I invite everybody to read those reports to download it from Gartner or to acquire it through one of their partners. But is the first things for me, it's always like I'm reading the criteria, because it does explain some of the decisions they made in that judgment. After, do I agree with those criteria? And I'm not sure if we are going to run through them, but do I agree with those criteria? That's a very interesting question, because some of the criteria is like voice is an optional criteria. So you have mandatory criteria or criterion and optionals, and voice is optional. And nowadays, for anyone that is working in this industry, we know voice is where the real money is. So making that as an optional was very interesting. The second thing is, and I love that, I don't remember if it was there last year, it's a QA monitoring and observability. Mm-hmm. I thought that was brilliant from their side to have done it. In my opinion, without criticizing, they group that together, which means probably if one have observability but poor QA, it might not have impacted them as much. And I think those three areas, it was QA, it was
observability and optimization.
Observability and improvement, I think. Yeah. They are very, very different areas. QA is close to my heart, as you know, observability to some degree as well. So I would have loved to see that separated, to be honest.
There's the thing that's a challenge with things like this is that, and it goes as well for the analytics. There's one of the criteria is having some kind of way of analyzing conversations and interactions, and that part as well is very much almost like dependent on the vendor. Every vendor has a slightly different approach to analytics and what they care about, and how they would constitute a successful conversation. Even though I think there shouldn't be variation. There is often, basically. So yeah, I think the eligibility or judging criteria is fair enough. I agree with you that multi-channel should include voice, and I don't know why voice is optional. I think any platform today that is aiming to automate conversations has got to be able to run in every channel, including voice. So yeah. So anything else on?
Anything that surprised you in those criteria, or anything you saw missing?
I think there's a few in there that are a bit kind of like, I don't know how important they are necessarily. Like, for example, AI assisted coding options. It's like, is that really that important that it should be an optional feature? I don't know really. Pro code options. I mean, it depends really in terms of should pro code be optional. That means that mandatory has to be no code or low code. And again, I don't know whether or not the interface is, how important is it basically, because you've got platforms that like Rasa, for example, fairly pro code. I know they've made a lot of changes recently, but fairly pro code, but incredibly powerful. And you've got ones that are the complete opposite end, which is more like a kind of like a voice flow. Um, so should those platforms be treated differently because one is pro code and one is low code? Are they both achieving the same outcome? So that's the only bit that I'm not 100% certain about, how much weight you should give to pro code versus no code.
I see what you're saying. I mean, for those who don't know, some of the criteria are multi-channels, are conversational flow building, there are tool integration like MCPs and things like that, RAG enabled. That was surprising to me.
Yeah.
RAG enabled, is that still, especially
Default.
because it talks about like having a minimum of something. I mean, having a minimum RAG is so simple that anybody can use it, or can do it. But one that was super good to see was AI guardrail. I think it's becoming such a subject. The provider are doing a great job there, but any enterprise will want to be able to add their own things.
Yeah,
and that is critical, I think.
Yeah.
You had an analytical modules, observability, QA. We talk about it, and other.
Yeah, I think just before we move on from guardrails, I think that's another one. I think it's a bit like analytics, which is different platforms have different ways of doing it. And for example, we'll get onto some of the vendors in here in a second. But for example, Google in conversational agents, although seemingly it's now changed the name again, it's like you turn them on or off, and you have like medium, low, or high strength. But the question is, what does that even mean? What exactly are you guardrailing against? And it's like I spoke to a company literally this morning that has this kind of bias measure. And say, well, what do you mean by bias? That's a massive, broad category. You can't just turn it on and say, right, now we're going to, monitor bias. What on earth does that mean? And different companies are going to have different requirements in and amongst all of that kind of thing. So I think that you're right in terms of, it's important to have that as a category. But it's still the Wild West at the moment in terms of how different platforms are approaching it.
Yeah, absolutely.
The only other, sorry, go on.
Yeah, I mean, and to that degree, it obviously we don't know the very details of Gartner work on those criteria, but and I might assume they have some very detailed things, but one things I didn't see, for example, it's things like interest a lot of people here is just like integration of models, how model dependent you are. From your provider versus how much you can plug whatever model you want. And if you are stuck with the provider model, probably something maybe Salesforce do or something like that, how good is that model? And I'm not talking about the benchmark out there. I'm talking about within the context of conversational AI, how well it reacts to red teamings, how well it reacts to consistency testing, and things like that. I would have loved to see something like that. I mean, Omelia, for example, is a great example of that. They provide their own model, I believe, and they are doing very, very well in voice. But how good they are at those things.
Yeah.
And those are not criteria which could have been added. So if Gartner is listening for next year, why not?
Absolutely. All right. So moving on from criteria, that's the discussion on criteria. Let's have a very sneak peek at the quadrant, shall we? Let's have a look at.
Shall we, before revealing the quadrant? I think it's important for people to understand how Gartner select those companies.
Yeah. Go on.
And they have criteria which are well explained. I just need to find them. Like, company must be established for a couple of years. Company must have been operating in the conversational AI models. Company, and because it might explain why you see some company and why you don't see some company to the listener out there. The company need to have 200 customers.
Mm-hmm.
And that's quite a big ask. Is it a fair ask? I don't know, but it is their criteria. They must have a minimum of 35 new customer that year for that year report. So they need to have had it 35 customer, and another 35 active customer need to spend more than 100K. So those are some of the criteria. There is also geographical criteria. You can't have more than 80% of people in one region, and the company must have 150 employees, and that's a lot. And the company must spend 20% of employee on product development or R&D. And there is other criteria, but you can see a little bit what they are targeting. And on a green market, it's getting less and less green, to be honest. But on a green market like conversational AI, I'm not sure what you think about those criteria.
Well, I think that this partly the issue, which maybe we can come on to, is that what are you assessing? Are you assessing platform capability and the tool, or are you assessing the company and the business? Because, for example, we can't get into the specific details, but there are some companies in here who have been kind of graded in a certain way, less favorably than you might expect, based on the fact that they decide to target certain industries, for example. So Avamo, very much healthcare focused. Boost, very much kind of regulated industry focused. So certain companies like that end up being appraised based on not just the tool, but also how they decide to target and their business operation, if you like. And I understand that they need to draw the line somewhere, because this market is very crowded and you've got loads of players, like, two people in the bedroom building on LangChain versus, more established companies. So you have to find a way of drawing the line and say, we only care about this kind of company. For me, it just gets a bit kind of like, I don't know, because there are some very good companies that probably don't quite meet that criteria, but platform-wise, they're really good. So it's kind of like, for me, it's a bit of a mix between, like, what are we assessing? Are we assessing the platform, or are we assessing the business?
Yeah, I do think they try to cover a little bit of both, because ultimately they're in the business of advising or helping enterprise select their vendor. And I do understand why they discard some of them.
You'd be there forever, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and maybe some smaller player might be struggling to support a big banks or some things like that. That said, maybe when they release a quadrant, they should release a cool vendor as well. At the same times, because I know cool vendor, it's another thing that Gartner does for people who don't know, that is a bit more targeted towards a kind of newcomer and things like that. Yeah, up and coming company.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Right. So, should we have a look?
Let's have a look.
All right. Sorry, Benoit, but your video has been lost, unfortunately, because I didn't have time before 12 o'clock to try and crop it properly. But we can hear. I think we can hear you. Oh, hold on. Can we hear you? No, we can't. There you are. Oh, you're there. You're back. You're back. We have got your video. Look at that. Yeah, brilliant. Cool. All right. So here we are. So we're looking at the quadrant now. So top right, we'll go through them one at a time, and then we can have a bit of a discussion. So top right, we have Google. Congratulations, Google. Salesforce, new entrant in 2026. Didn't make it in the last few. SoundHound, they've gone up a bit. They've made quite a few acquisitions. Amelia, live person interactions, all that kind of stuff. Core AI, fairly stable. They've been in that kind of quadrant in every single Magic Quadrant so far, actually. So that's the top right. Top left, we have Boost AI. We're a leader in the last one, gone down to a challenger in this one. Netomi, brand new. Interesting. I'd never actually known much about Netomi before, so that's a good new addition there. Bottom right, Nice Cognigy, very interesting. They've always been in the top right. In every other one so far, they've actually come down in their ability to execute. Is there a trend there after being acquired by Nice? I don't know. Amelia, fairly similar, I think, to last time. IBM, we can debate that shortly. Poly AI's gone up, very close to the center. Poly AI. So in the bottom left, you've got Poly AI, Sprinkler, Druid AI, Avamo, and Yellow AI just clinging on there. Just about made it. Before we get into this, we've got a question here, which is, why is there no Parloa on the list? And also interesting that companies like Cresta, Sierra, and Glean don't appear here as well. Vapi and Retail are fan favourites. I think partly all of this stuff goes to the kind of inclusion criteria that Benoit mentioned earlier on. They've got to have a certain revenue number, they've got to have a certain number of customers, they've got to have a certain geographic presence, they've got to have a certain staff number, and all that kind of stuff they need to have in order to be included. Parloa do get a mention in the report further back, along with the likes of Raza, Sierra, Decagon, and Microsoft, but they don't make it to the actual quadrant for reasons which we might be able to get into in a bit. So that's how it's shaping up. Movers and shakers from last year. General thoughts, Benoit, on how it looks?
Yeah, I mean, very, very surprised of the newcomer. I have to admit, I have not come across them. So I don't know, maybe they're on a market which is a bit more Asia-based or something like that. So I would have to check them out, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, and it's again my opinion, I'm surprised to see some of them as on top, because having used them very, very recently again, it doesn't feel like the tools are very mature. So we are talking about the Google of this world and so on. I mean, Google was very, very good, and seems like the trend has left the platform and they were not in it. And I think they are trying to catch it, and they are rebranding, and that's what a lot of companies do. They rebrand the same product to say it's new. But from what I have seen, it's very, very mature compared to some others that are not in the quadrant there. So yeah, Nice is really interesting to see them going a little bit down, just because it's a strong company, but the acquisition might concern Gartner on their capability to execute. We know it just generates a lot of instability usually, even so they've been told that they will run independently and it's going to change nothing and so on. This is what every acquirer said to every company they acquire. So yeah, I mean, some surprised. I'm surprised why Google is there and Microsoft not there. I know Microsoft is really bitsy and
so is Google, to be fair. I mean, Google, Google's got its agent development kit, it's got Vertex, it's got what was conversational agents, it's now something else, CX agents or something like that, as of like last week. And so it's kind of, I mean, I've got a bit of a soft spot for Google, to be totally honest, in terms of like Dialogflow CX. I know, Dialogflow CX, conversational agents, whatever it's called now. Like, I think principally that platform isn't a bad platform. You've got a blend of generative versus deterministic. I think it's weak in terms of how it's integrated the generative into the deterministic side of things. And I think it's a bit complex for people who don't know the platform. But it's just because I've been using it for a while, I kind of have a little bit of soft spot for it. But I think that what's mainly, I think, for Google on this particular report is predominantly because of its position in AI. It's got its own models that are some of the best models in the world up there with Anthropic and OpenAI. It has its own cloud infrastructure, so it's literally kind of like every single element of the stack. It's its own thing that it's built itself. It's got its own kind of like processes and all that kind of stuff. So, it's yes, the actual tooling bit, which really this should be about appraising, is probably lacking. But the rest of the kind of like company is incredibly strong when it comes to AI. So I think maybe is a bit of those two
Bias
elements
there.
balancing.
Yeah. I mean, it's like if I see Salesforce, I don't even know Salesforce is providing a conversational AI platform. Do they really?
Well, they've got Agentforce, but and they've just acquired Fin, which was Intercom, recently rebranded to Fin. So Salesforce have just acquired that. The challenge
that would not put you on top.
No, it wouldn't. No,
you know what I mean.
No,
Fin, all respect to Intercom, but Fin is, a side project.
Well,
at best from Intercom.
Intercom have changed in terms of its business since Fin, though. They have really aligned everything towards it, and they viewed it as its main product. But the problem,
I know, in terms of marketing, I agree.
Yeah.
But in terms of solutions, no.
No, I think the thing with Fin is that they've took a different approach. I wouldn't call Fin an AI platform. I would call it a product, because basically you get what you're given, and it's very opinionated about what it does. It's not like these other ones where you can build all of your use cases yourself and you can control all elements of the stack to create the experiences that you want. You basically just Fin is Fin, and Fin will behave like Fin, and you just give it your data and it'll do the thing. But Agentforce, the problem with Agentforce, not the problem, but like the limitation, if you like, is that with it being so closely coupled to a CRM, it limits what it can do. And I think you could probably say that for a few of the others, perhaps on here. Nice Now, you could say that, closely coupled, basically wedded to its contact center. I know that Cognigy as a platform isn't. It's still completely independent. You can build whatever you want. You can deploy it in whatever channels you want. You can do what you like with it. But what's the direction going to be? I imagine the direction over time is going to be it's going to become more and more closely and tightly coupled to NICE's contact center. Which also is an interesting thing around how then, now that NICE as a company is a contact center company, does this mean that this is now a contact center platform Magic Quadrant? Because if that's the case, then where's everyone else? Zoom, you could probably put into that category. I'd probably say that Zoom isn't as good as Cognigy in terms of their AI capabilities, but still quite strong, got their own proprietary models, making a lot of improvements. But it's a contact center platform primarily. So where do you draw the line about who gets included in here in future?
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned Zoom, actually, because they have a decent platform, and they probably are close to have the criteria to feature in it, but they're not even mentioned, nor in the quadrant, nor in the honorary mentions, or the one that almost made it. So maybe they don't have the quantity of clients using the platform. So they have some strict requirements, or maybe not the scale of it in terms of financial contract. But yeah, what's always really interesting to me on those quadrant is, and I would love to get your opinion on that. But let's say, and we work with big banks, and we work with a few large enterprises, and if they were gonna ask me, who they should go, and obviously they will have specific criteria for it and so on. But I think quite a few of them will be already off my list even before looking at their criteria.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I would say so. Yeah. And again, there's selection criteria here that isn't kind of captured. So, for example, let's take, for example, Poly AI. Honestly, I'm a big fan of Poly AI. I think that they, as a company, they're really good. As a platform, they're really good. As a group of people, they're really good. Historically, so the interesting thing about Poly AI, and the reason why it's climbing up into that top right quadrant over the years, is because as a company, it's research based. They're all researchers. It's a bit like a mini OpenAI. They're all researchers, and all they care about is innovation and building better stuff. So they have their own, as close to a proprietary model as you could probably get. It's fine tuned, but it's not fine tuned as in just throw a bit of data at it and let it go. It's like this Raven model they have has been trained on millions of conversations. It's not been fine tuned at the surface level in terms of just feed a bit of data and guide the model. It's been like at the kind of parameter level, it's been like really highly fine tuned. So Poly AI as a company, I think, is really great. But the thing with Poly AI is, I would recommend that you use a company like that if you don't want to actually do it. So you just want that company to solve your problem for you. Poly AI will do that pretty effectively. But that's completely different to, for example, like Google or Core or even Boost to some extent, although Boost have got pretty strong pro services. But those platforms are ones where really you purchase the platform and you build on it yourself. You want a team involved, you've got your own team, your own capabilities, your own competencies, and then you build on top of that. And then within that group, you've got highly technical teams and less technical teams, which then guides where you would go, sort of thing. So there's selection criteria that's not captured in this report, which is more about the relationship with the provider and the skill sets that you have, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's absolutely fair, actually. Also interesting is to still see IBM there. I mean,
I can't believe it took us this long to call out IBM, but yeah, I'm amazed at that.
Well done to them, to some degree. They might know something I don't, but for having tried, I'm a big fan of IBM to start with.
Yeah.
I've been working with IBM Watson since it was a server in their New York office, and you needed almost like a blood test to access it. But it's just like their Watson has completely lost their way, in my opinion. And the roadmap, where is the roadmap? Where is the Gen AI aspect? They have been very, very strong with Watson Assistant at the times a few years back, and still used in a lot of companies. But where is the next gen? That I don't know. I have tried Watson X. I've tested it. There are new stuff. It's basic at best.
Yeah.
So it's just, how come they're still, in the people that are supposed to have the vision? I don't see the vision there.
No, I agree with that. Yeah, I think IBM is one of those kind of crazy enigmas. If you look at other platforms on there, for example, like Boost, Druid has been around for a long time, highly capable platform, really, really effective, integrated Gen AI fairly well, got a lot around QA, a lot around analytics. You can't really compare the two. They're different platforms anyway, because IBM's more kind of pro code and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I agree. It's an obscure thing to have as such a highly rated company. We've got quite a few comments here. I'm going to go through some of these comments and get your thoughts on some of this stuff. So Ian has asked, do you think the conversational AI is now a driving narrative for CCaaS selection, i.e. customers asks for AI first, then CCaaS selection comes second, and therefore the most important element is the conversational AI? I would say that yes, however, the CCaaS vendors broadly haven't got round to thinking on those levels.
I don't know. I don't know if they are not, because
let me frame it another way.
Okay.
So the big CCaaS providers are currently kind of license based, bums on seats based, and their whole sales force is oriented towards a certain way of selling and a certain way of doing business. So even though the business strategically might be thinking AI is really important, we need to sort ourselves out, I think that how they go to market, one, is like prehistoric compared to what's needed today. And also how fast they're going to move is going to be slowed down by the fact that on the one hand, AI is the biggest opportunity that contact centers are ever going to get. But on the other hand, it's the biggest threat that they're ever going to come up against.
Yeah.
Because it's completely shifting their whole business model everyone I think at this point probably agrees that over time your interactions with customers are going to be AI mediated, as in every single channel is going to touch the AI first, and increasingly over time it's going to automate more and more and more and more and more, such that the contact center, although I think it will always be there and always be important, essentially it plays the role of mandatory plumbing required when humans have to get involved, which is entirely different to everything is oriented around the contact center. So I don't know what you think.
I mean, I think tech company a bit more left side, but tech company like Content Guru that have understood straight away that the AI it's either they get on board or they might struggle quite quickly. So I think a lot of CCaaS have understood that. Have they understand how they change their business model? That's a very, very valid questions. I think for a lot of them is fuck it until you make it.
Yeah.
Still right now, and I think for enterprise that would want to invest into that, I would still try to separate the two things for now, just because the market is moving so fast. We can see a lot of CCaaS are acquiring conversational AI. Cognigy is a great example of that. So yeah, I think I would be very concerned if I was trying to buy all in one. Yet I think in 2, 3, 4, 5 years time, the conversation will be very, very different. But for now, yeah,
I agree. I think that specialist AI vendors are going to be, fingers on the pulse, isn't it? Basically, that's the only thing they're concerned about. Whereas I think that if I look at Five9, for example, I think they acquired Inference a long time back. Very rarely hear about Five9 being skilled in or competent in terms of deploying AI. Genesys acquired Bold 360 and a bunch of other companies. I do come across quite a few companies that use Genesys, but it's almost like, well, we've got Genesys, so we're just going to use it type of thing, rather than we've selected it for a particular reason.
It's access.
Yeah. The only company I would say that has probably had a slightly different approach, I would probably say is Zoom. Because they have really gone out. They acquired, I can't remember what the name of the company was, they acquired a conversational AI platform, but rather than just resting on the laurels and sitting with it, they've kind of built out an agentic kind of piece to it. They've built out kind of an agentic workflow bit to it. They've kind of invested in training their own models based on conversations. So like, at least it seems as though they get it. But you can't say the same, I don't think, in terms of what's happened in progress with the rest of them, which...
Yeah, I think we have, as you know, we have a client that are using ZVA as part of their Zoom platforms. And the feedback seems to be very, very good so far. So, something to dig through.
Yeah. We mentioned Natomi. Congratulations to Natomi, if congratulations is the right word. I one of those that I thought I had a pretty good pulse on all this kind of stuff, but I'd heard of them before, but I never met a company that uses them. I've never come across them. They were recently invested in by Accenture, 120 million. They've been around since 2015, so they've kind of been at it for quite a while. Used to be Message.ai or something like that. So yeah, I mean, it's a new one on me. I'm gonna have to go and have a look at what they're all about.
You talk about investment. It's a very, very good point. I think Boost as a sweet spot for me as Druid, especially because we have seen with the geopolitical things happening, a lot of European companies starting to think, where is my data?
Yeah,
it's in US. US is in their own space right now, and have their own challenge, and some people are thinking about buying more EU. So you have those two companies that are there. There is only a few if you look at the quadrant. There's only a few there, and I think that's a really important factor for some people, and they have a sweet spot for me, those two companies as well.
Yeah, and ironically, Boost and probably I think Avamo are the two that we mentioned earlier. They have more of a specific focus in terms of verticals, which I wouldn't say that precludes you from being able to cater for other verticals, because both of them have companies and clients from across a range of different industries. But they have a bigger proportion. For example, in Avamo's case, it's healthcare. In Boost's case, it's kind of like financial services, regulated industries. So I don't see that as a problem, because the platform is the platform, and the client base is based on how you decide to target, isn't it? Now, if you line up 100 different industries and you were to say, out of those 100 industries, which industries would find more value quicker from AI? Financial services and healthcare have got to be in the top few. So, you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah,
So you're bound. What I'm saying is you're bound to go there, aren't you? Because that's where the opportunity is.
And this is something I didn't understand so much in the report, is they have been boosted, particularly have been marked down for a few things like less growth than their competitor. Yeah, but they mainly on the European market compared to the other ones that are, heavily on the US market. So they will have less chance there. The second thing I saw, and I was a bit like, actually it's counterproductive. I think it's a very US way to think about it, is they have had less investment. But they probably have had less investment because they can run on their own money.
Yeah.
And how can that be a caution?
Yeah.
Caution?
Yeah.
Am I saying it correctly? A warning in the report. Not having investment means you are working for your customer, you are not working for your investor. So that puzzled me. I understand it might be a factor, but to mark someone negatively for that, I don't think that's correct.
Yeah, I agree. One mention I think which it's worth just digging into ever so slightly is SoundHound. So for those that don't know SoundHound, I think they were on it last year, but they come from essentially sort of like on-device voice AI. Originally, it was like a music recognition thing, a bit like Shazam. Then it built its own kind of proprietary voice models, and it was really big in cars and stuff like that, and the days of Alexa and stuff. And then it's essentially gone on a bit of a journey of kind of acquiring different companies. So Interactions, it acquired Amelia, it acquired who else was it? Live Person, I think, recently. So through acquisition, it's managed to kind of, through acquisition, it's managed to create itself a big player in this space. My sort of like two sides to this is that, one, as a company, in terms of its culture and its history, extremely competent, very capable. But right now, in terms of kind of applying that to customer experience and conversational AI, I think you have to have a bit of a question mark, because it is now essentially 4 companies.
Exactly, it's a mashup of company. And it's a mashup of company that is not even coming from their core discipline.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, credit on the pivot of the company, well done to them. But yeah, it's interesting because it's a big company, but it's mainly a mashup of companies that have been acquired. I don't know much about their product, to be honest.
I know quite a lot about the history of them and stuff like that. And as I said, that they are capable into, especially voice AI, incredibly. The two on that list that in terms of voice AI that I would call out particularly would be SoundHound and Poly AI, because those are the two that I know for a fine fact have their very own models. Amelia has its own speech recognition models and stuff like that as well, so that's important. I know that everyone will probably look at this and say, oh well, Google have got speech, text to speech and speech to text, and everyone else has, and OpenAI, just use Whisper. But the reality is that for a speech recognition model that works in the phone channel on an 8-bit signal, and it only concerns itself with speech and conversations, as well as kind of like certain industries and getting certain product types right and all this kind of stuff, it is quite important to have that specialism, I would say, and you won't get that necessarily out the box. And then in terms of managing the conversational element, again, OpenAI is brilliant in terms of ChatGPT and all that kind of stuff, but if you talk to ChatGPT, it's got the disfluencies and the little kind of voice mannerisms right, but in terms of an interaction pattern, it's still quite clunky. It's very verbose. It's very long-winded. It's kind of like, it's not perfect. So I think that when it comes to customer experience, having a very deep specialism in that type of thing, I think is important. So for SoundHound, I think that they're capable there. It's just that, as you said, they're 4 different companies, and how they go about, bringing that together is a mystery, really.
Yeah, some work ahead of them.
Yeah. So wrapping up on I think we'll look at some honourable mentions, and then I think it'll be good for us to say, who do we think should, independent of criteria in terms of like your revenue and that kind of stuff, who do we think is worth potentially discussing in terms of a.
Do you think that's not a full podcast?
It could be. Yeah, it could be. We'll try and keep it. We'll try and keep it relatively light. So, honourable mentions: Decagon.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. Making a lot of waves, Decagon. I think what's interesting about Decagon is that, one, they are riding the hype, absolutely, which means that they're getting a lot of noise and a lot of attention. OpenAI endorse them quite regularly, and so they're kind of doing the right thing. The Achilles heel for Decagon, if I was to think that they have one, would be the absolute all-in nature of generative AI. Whereas I still think, call me a sort of purist, but I still think that there's ways and situations where you have to select the right tool for the job, rather than
purist or dinosaur.
I don't know. But I think that the things that I haven't seen from Gen AI systems yet, which I think will come, but what I haven't seen from them yet is, for example, I think that you should select the most appropriate UI for the specific part in the conversation that requires it. So if you're going to design a conversation that's going to do, for example, collect somebody's credit card number, I've seen Pipestream do this really, really well, which is that in the chat widget, they will just, a graphic comes up of a credit card, and the bit where you put the credit card number is in the place on the credit card where you'd expect the credit card number. And it's great. You just kind of type the number in, and it's really engaging. And there's another thing they did where it was like a healthcare use case where they had to solicit symptoms from the user. And so in the chat kind of widget, they just put a icon of a body, and with your mouse, you just select on the body which part hurts. If it's your wrist that hurts, or if it's your ankle, you just click. And it's just things like that turn something from dialogue into the best thing to get the information and the best experience at the time. And I just don't think that Gen AI end to end is quite there yet.
No, that's valid point.
Yeah. So, but anyway, Decagon, great company, and I think that they're definitely on the right path. Microsoft, honourable mention, as they always are.
I think that's more anyway. Let's call it politics.
Yeah, very true, very true. Interestingly, Microsoft has got about 900 different AI tools. So has Google.
It is true. It is true that Microsoft is a bit all over the place.
Yeah,
it's a bit all over the place lately, which is a shame. If you think about the pre-Gen AI area, you had Luis. That was a good first iterations. It was doing all right. And after what was the name?
Was it Composer?
That was their framework, wasn't it?
Yeah.
They had Luis, and they had. Or was Luis the second?
I think Luis was the NLU, wasn't it? Then they had Composer, which was over the top of it, was it?
Yeah.
And then they did something with Power Virtual Agents, and then they did whatever it is they've got now. It's
Microsoft. Stop focusing only on the developer.
Yeah.
Please stop focusing on the developers.
Yeah. All right. Another honorable mention, Parloa.
Yeah. Of course, makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Very good company. As you said, making a lot of waves there. Interesting to see where they will be next year.
Yeah. Very good at what they did well, I think, is 2 things which I think turns out to have been absolutely the right calls. Is one is a very early investment into a more kind of agentic approach, and 2 was really doubling down on voice. And this year, everyone's now going voice crazy and agent crazy, and Parloa just kind of emerged as the perfect platform because they were a bit early in trying to really kind of like.
It's timing.
Yeah.
Timing, know?
Yeah. So, yeah. Rasa, honorable mention?
Yeah, I guess you have to. because it's such a foundation, and Rasa has managed, if anything, Rasa has managed to keep up
Yeah.
with the evolutions, and just for that, they should be there. And I think it would be nice to see a little bit more from Rasa.
Yeah.
A little bit, and maybe we can get them on a podcast or something like that. Just to see not so much only the talking, but what that mean in reality.
Yeah. I
So
think Rasa, again, I've got a soft spot for a few companies that have been there from the beginning and done it. And I think with Rasa, what I have always liked about Rasa is they are very much kind of purists when it comes to conversation design. They really do, as a company from the ground up, care about really, really great conversations. And I think that some companies, I won't name names, but some companies are approaching it from it's opportunist, it's Gen AI, and we're going to build a platform for Gen AI, and we're going to really kind of like hone in, and almost like the result of that, which is the enablement of successful conversations, is almost a byproduct of us just really investing in this technology. Whereas Rasa seemed to me to come at it from the other way, which is all we care about is really, really great conversations, and we're just going to work backwards from that to try and build something that solves it.
and it's interesting because obviously you have a very sweet spot for them, and Alan is great, and so on. For me, what you see as a great things, I see it as a weakness. I think they are too much of a purist.
Yeah.
I think and maybe maybe I'm dealing with old information, but I think they lack a little bit of pragmatism. We can't spend, if a conversation is good but not great, and maybe that's okay for a lot of companies.
Yeah, maybe. I think the
because maybe you have 10 other things to do that will add more value than moving that conversation from good to great.
Yeah, I think the thing that, from Raz's point, again, I don't build and sell SaaS, so I don't know. But it's like it's going from that kind of like purist bit and philosophy to the productization. I think the thing for Rasa that's always been, I think, a bit of a challenge is that it is very much a developer platform.
Yeah.
On the one hand, you've got the people that care about the conversation and making the conversation great, which is more the kind of designer. But in order to get to that, you have to be a developer. And I don't think they've managed to properly square that circle in terms of make that platform accessible for those that have got the eye and the ear for those great conversations. So it's those are, I think, the two things that are a bit misaligned.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's so much knowledge in that company.
Oh yeah.
They are, in terms of you need to know something you don't know, they will. So yeah.
Yeah. And the last one is Sierra. Brett Taylor, ex-Salesforce CEO.
I know.
On the board of OpenAI.
Yeah.
If he wasn't included, yeah, might have been a few phone calls.
Yeah, it's interesting. Why have they not been included?
Well, apparently they were doing 100 million a year.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
Below the threshold. Is it below the threshold? What was it?
No. It's the threshold. It's 30 client at $100K.
Oh right. Yeah. Well, they probably meet that. The
and
doing
it was what, 300 client or 200 client? I don't remember the exact number.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
It's one of those companies that worries me because I don't really understand much about the product, and I understand, and I don't think a lot of people do have a good knowledge of the product, but everybody knows the owner.
Yeah,
and that tell me it's a marketing machine, or their marketing machine is working very, very well.
Yeah,
which is great. Don't get me wrong, but what about that's lovely. But now, what about the product?
Yeah, I agree. From what I've heard from Sierra, it's very kind of RAG first. I think it's only fairly recently it started to build out more kind of agentic, kind of like automation type features. But it's one of them. It's one of those kind of like new school vendors, very heavily funded, very well connected. And I think as long as, same thing for Decagon, I think if Sierra and Decagon can kind of for me, if it was me, again, take this for what it's worth. But what I would be doing is you've got the kind of old school, if you like, NLU built on NLU, grounded in conversational interactions. And those companies have then kind of graduated to be like, where does Gen AI fit best and how can we make it work best? Which means that you've got solid foundations, lots of clients, lots of interactions, lots of expertise, and then you're like, how do we make it even better? The other angle is that we don't care about all that stuff. We're all Gen AI native, and all we care about is LLMs. And the things that those platforms have is better support for end-to-end Gen AI, better support for those kind of agentic frameworks and stuff like that, a bit more forward thinking in terms of where this technology is going and all that kind of thing. What they lack is some of the fundamentals that I think they need to have, you know, the ability to just bring in some deterministic things here and there when you need it, the ability to do little bits like that.
Yeah.
You know, I remember Salesforce, it was like they launched the Agentforce platform in whatever year it was, and the year later they announced the capability to extract an entity from an utterance. It's stuff like that. There's things that these companies are learning as they deploy.
Yeah.
They're facing problems that were solved in 2018.
Yeah.
And
I
so
know.
it's kind of like that's what they need to do, I think, is to continue to innovate, but also have a look back and think, what fundamentals do we need to bring in to stabilize it a bit, you know?
This is why, and one of them that is not even mentioned, and it's probably doesn't fit the criteria for whatever reason, but it's voice flow.
Yeah.
VAPI, I understand. VAPI, newcomer, really interesting, a tiny bit buggy, but VAPI is quite impressive. But voice flow, their new version they released in May, I believe, or something like that, with a new way of dealing with agentic kind of framework. It looks very, very, very good. You might not be able with a platform like that to get the perfect experience, the purist in you, Kane, the purist experience. But in terms of a business that is very, very pragmatic about, maybe investing hundreds of thousands of dollars, but not tens of $1 million in that initiatives. It's a really, really, really good platform, which will beat a lot of people on that quadrant, in my point of view.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the thing that VoiceFlow could really do with solving, I think, is if you look at your likes of Core AI, Boost, Poly AI, and Nice Cognigy in particular, is that they have essentially their very own homegrown built voice capabilities from the point of view of integration.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that holds VoiceFlow back from being proper enterprise, is that you can't have a proper enterprise deployment that's grabbing a Twilio number and borrowing some of Twilio's infrastructure, which you completely don't control. All these other ones have got their own voice kind of like infrastructure, so they can monitor the calls, they can see dropouts, they can trace the whole thing, and it's kind of like, yeah, it's a bit more,
Yeah, no, I see
enterprise.
what you.
Whereas
Yeah,
VoiceFlow is a little bit like, we've got to do voice, so let's integrate with Twilio type of thing. So that's the
yeah.
only thing with VoiceFlow. But that's an
It's
integration
it's not a
thing.
big deal to me. It's more, looking at latency. If it was impacting latency, and it might, yeah, that I would. But after, I'm a big believer of all those platforms doing a million things. Like, those platforms need to have a QA. No, they don't. We have seen the QA platform from Cognigy. I have great respect for Cognigy, but their QA platform is is a prototype at best, and because it's on their core business, they're absolutely awesome,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of people try to do observability and so on, and there's company out there that do great observability, probably better than what the provider are going to provide. I think it's a bit more like a tick box exercise for the sales cycle. But again, I'm just, for people out there, this is my opinion. This is your opinion. Probably the provider are jumping and screaming on some of the stuff we are saying. So if they do, it would be great to have them and have a chat, really. Maybe like do a round table or something like that.
100%. And very finally, we're on top of the hour, so we'll wrap up. But very finally, I think one of the things that is missing, that I probably expect to see next year, is Amazon. So
Yeah.
Amazon, obviously, they've got Lex. it is. We could call it what you want. It's not a great platform, but it is being used. Bedrock's being used quite heavily, and they've just acquired NLX. NLX wasn't on this in recent years. Maybe it's because I don't know if it's revenue or customers or whatever. But Amazon have all of the component parts to make a really good effort. They haven't quite put it all together in a proper nice package yet. But I suspect that after the acquisition of NLX, the NLX team are like genuinely, they do really know their stuff. So if they're given responsibility and a little bit of ownership, I think they could be
that's very, very.
Yeah. All right, cool.
All right.
Thank you, Benoit. Appreciate it. Thank you all for tuning in. Good discussion going on in the chat here. I'm going to have to get through this chat and go through.
We will have to go through the chat.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Thank you all very much. Hopefully this has been enjoyable, and we'll see you again soon. Cheers.
Okay. Take care. Bye.